Hello and welcome to the Art Deli Sideshow. My name is Art Delinsky. I'm so happy to be here with you. Today I'll be following up on the Coca-Cola boycott, if you remember, and I'll present a breakdown of why I think the so-called Latino Freeze, which is the movement that's calling for the boycott, and also like all the other boycotts, is actually a shell campaign that's targeting Latinos with Agitprop and fear-mongering around immigration and Trump. I'll also be talking a little bit more about the Agitprop to propaganda pipeline using this Coca-Cola scandal or fake news outrage, whatever, as a case study. So, a little something for us to learn. I also have a little bit of an editor's note. I'll try to keep it brief. I think that a lot of times, people want commentary and breakdowns on issues as they happen. And as much as that's my background and my training and, what I want to do, I'm finding that reflecting on news items like a month or so after their headlines kind of gives me a better understanding of how some of the projects and narratives unfolded or evolved since, they were headlines. So if you're wondering why I'm covering something from last month when like 99.9% of news related podcasts or whatever focus on the now, it's because I'm trying to understand and break down the propaganda, not necessarily be part of the machine that's creating it. And with that being said, of course, falling into a conspiracy rabbit hole is something that I'm going to continuously try to avoid, and I hope that this show will help you do that in some way. What I mean by that is I'll always be clear when I'm giving my attention, my opinion, and if I have like open-ended questions or whatever, it's not really to fill it in with conspiracy theories. It's really just me trying to point out a hole in the narrative or piece of propaganda that I'm talking about. A recent word of advice that I received from someone is not to ask why first, because this will allow for like creative liberties, which I totally understand and I'm guilty of doing. A better question to start off with is who's doing it and under whose authority and how, kind of sticking to the logistics and the details. And if something is blatantly obvious, like in today's episode, or, in the previous episode when I talked about this Coca-Cola boycott, it feels a little bit silly not to point out what I'm seeing. Like, it feels kind of silly to talk around it. But again, I'll be very clear when it's just my opinion. And of course, I'm not immune to being wrong or being manipulated. So if I'm wrong, feel free to shout me out, let me know. And overall, I don't know how to fight the info wars that we're in, and I don't have any answers. And the best that I have to offer in these weird ass times is the show, and these breakdowns. And I guess you can call it some sort of an online community. And if you want my advice, which, if you're asking for my advice, that just alone means that we're in weird times. I recommend going outside, let the sun hit your face and go touch grass and wave to a neighbor and read a book or watch a PBS documentary about how we used to be lizards and fish and stuff, and maybe the vastness of our existence as creatures that continue to evolve will give you some sort of hope, The greatest weapon that you have is free will. Okay, editor's note over. Let's get back to the show. Okay, so last month I came across a fake news item about Coca-Cola firing employees who were illegal immigrants and then calling ICE on them. Well, this apparently was all the rage on TikTok, and everyone and their mom had to go online and give their little bit of commentary about it. So let's listen to this real quick clip from one of these videos, kind of talking about this whole hot mess.
Everybody heard about the Coca-Cola drama? Has everybody heard what Coca-Cola did to their employees?
Well, Coca-Cola, you really screwed up this time when you pissed off your largest customer base in the Hispanic community. Yes, what's circling right now is that Coca-Cola decided to fire a bunch of workers. I believe it was in Texas. And not only did they fire them, but they also reported them to immigration.
And if you'd like to hear more commentary from the brilliant minds over there on TikTok, check out my second episode titled Who's Lying About ICE Raids and Why. You can hear my full breakdown about why I thought that story was fake then. And a month later, I'm here to tell you, ding, 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 I was right. So today we'll take a look at these 4 short articles. They're actually the first 4 that show up when I run a search for Coca-Cola Latino boycott. So I'll read them real quick and I'll kind of try to see what role, if any, they play in shaping this broader narrative that we are living today. So earlier I mentioned the Agitprop to propaganda pipeline, and here's how I see it. The Coca-Cola ice raid story, which was a hoax, was the Agitprop, and it was designed to immediately, boom, make you feel outrage, fear, anger, just whatever emotional reaction that's negative. But the propaganda isn't just emotions. The propaganda itself is something that you believe in. So the next step to get you from the Agitprop is to validate and enforce those feelings in echo chambers, whether they're online or in person, which will eventually lead you into action because you'll get validated. So the echo chambers serve as like a central hub for ideological reinforcements using tactics like friend-enemy distinction, where you divide people into us versus them. It's just stuff that you see online all the time, which also, by the way, the friend-enemy distinction is a Nazi tactic, so pretty gross stuff. Also moral superiority, making believers and people in the echo chamber feel righteous. And we hear this type of condescension from influencers, political figures. Who do we not hear from? You get called a Nazi, you get called a libtard, you get called everything. Everyone is smarter and better than you because you don't believe the same thing that they believe in, all right? Then you have repetition and groupthink, where you just make sure that everyone is on messaging, everyone is saying the same thing, and that the messaging sticks. That's why you hear people who use like second grader vocabulary and then all of a sudden use phrases like proximity to whiteness, just completely inorganic phrases that don't even match up with the way that they talk, their own lexicon, and then all of a sudden here it is. That's a messaging that's on brand thing that you hear all the time. It's a conditioning to make you believe in it. So the Agitprop is the Coca-Cola ice raid hoax. It hit social media, creating instant outrage. Then you have the echo chambers that are created by the algorithm. And then you have the commentary videos that people creating, whether they know or not, they're contributing to it, amplifying a false narrative through TikTok and Twitter, whatever, Instagram. And then you have the propaganda hub, the point of contact for this boycott. And in this case, it's a Latino Freeze movement. It steps in to give it structure, to give it validation, to enforce the messaging using different tactics, eventually driving some sort of action. So I'll cover the Latino Freeze movement in just a moment after I go over these articles. But for now, let's check out these articles and see what role, if any, they play in this agitprop to propaganda pipeline. First one, Latino group calls for a boycott against popular U.S. brands, from Fox 5 in San Diego, published February 7th. So let's go ahead and read. San Diego border report. Videos on social media are circulating showing Latinos rejecting or turning away from American products in response to mass deportation taking place around the country. One video shows a family about to have dinner together when a young man emphatically tells his mother, how could you do that when Coca-Cola is turning its back on Mexicans? In response, the mom takes a larger bottle of Coke and pours its contents down the drain. This is a part of an effort by a group called Latino Freeze movement. I've been calling it the Latin Freeze, the Latino Freeze movement to boycott American companies and products while poking fun at the ongoing deportation launched by the Trump administration and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. The activists say this is, quote, their way of turning their backs on United States companies, asking customers not to spend their money on American corporations. On its website, the Freeze Latino movement exhorts Latinos and Latinas, stop spending money, hold the line. We can all collectively make a big impact by simply holding and not spending our money. So this is the first article, and the rest of it is Latino Freeze movement. Shop here, companies committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion, and they added this list February 21st. So you can just take a look-see at it. I think it's interesting. You notice how Disney has an asterisk next to it? Okay. So this is the list of the places not to shop. And they're either scaling back, I guess, on DEI or being, quote, passive over DEI and inclusion policies. Okay. I thought, well, I guess silence is violence and violence is silence and words and rah, rah, rah. So these are, kind of the Coca-Cola you can see is indeed on here. Okay, let's move on. Next up from newsnation, why are some calling for a Coca-Cola boycott? And then there's 3 bullet points. Coca-Cola among several companies critiqued by Freeze Latino movement, I guess we're not sticking with one name. Activist group wants its followers to spend with companies that support DEI. And then the third bullet point says Coca-Cola has not scaled back its DEI operations. So that's all right, let's move on. This is from February 12th, and it starts off with a newly established Latino group is speaking out against Coca-Cola as part of its campaign against companies that do not support diversity, equity, and inclusion, aka DEI. Others in social media are also boycotting the popular soda company, but the reasons for this are unclear. That's hilarious. Who is leading the Coca-Cola boycott? Great question. The Latino Freeze movement was created in 2025. It calls itself a grassroots movement. That's kind of funny that it says that it calls itself that, saying, because it's totally astroturfed, in my opinion, saying it is committed to, quote unquote, showing the value that Latinos, other minorities, and allies have in the United States. According to newsnation affiliate Border Report, videos are circulating on social media of Latinos rejecting Coca-Cola. Latinos and Latinas, stop spending money, hold the line. We can all collectively make a big impact by simply holding and not spending our money, the Latino Freeze movement said on its website. Again, don't worry, we'll get to that website. Why are they calling for the boycott? Oh my God. Why are they calling for the Coca-Cola boycott? The group urges its followers not to buy Coca-Cola or shop at Amazon, Target, Walmart, and other companies that have scaled back DEI efforts. Coca-Cola has a website dedicated to DEI and has not announced any reductions in its initiative. Okay, and they hyperlink the words dedicated to DEI, so let's click on that bad boy. Oh, what is this? Well, it's a lovely Black woman with a smart water bottle with the words diversity, equity, and inclusion. Learn about the Coca-Cola Company growth strategies related to diversity, equity, and inclusion in communities and our workplaces worldwide. Okay, glasses, I see you. Yeah, some people in the background. Coca-Cola Company. Yeah. So again, why are they being boycotted? It's just weird, right? It's not that it just a whole thing is based on a lie. So that's why this is just like a fascinating case study to me. Continuing on with the article. Others on TikTok have floated claims Coca-Cola called ICE on its employees at a plant and are using the hashtag Latino Freeze. None of these rumors have been confirmed. You know, is that fascinating? Excuse me. Isn't that fascinating? Newsweek reviewed company records and public filings and did not find any evidence of mass layoffs. Meanwhile, a conservative research group has issued a woke alert for Coca-Cola's support of transgender women participating in women's sports. Whoa, they're just everywhere. It's coming out of everywhere. Consumer research also criticized Coca-Cola for saying, quote, DEI is at the heart of its values. Coca-Cola, according to its website, has approximately 530 million consumers in Latin America. All right, well, what did we get from this article? I think it's a little bit of nothing, but hey, okay, confirmed. Another confirmation, activist group wants followers to not spend money with companies that don't support DEI. Coca-Cola never said they're not supporting, so, it's just weird. And also, just a piece that I find fascinating in this whole propaganda thing, that we have a opposition named. And if you know a thing or two about a thing or two, like, for example, like community organizing and kind of getting people motivated and or mobilized, Saul Delinsky would tell you that your opposition's reaction is your action. So it's just interesting. They're just throwing this in there. I don't know. It's just to me, it's fascinating. I'm going to move on to the next article. Oh, wait. Another thing that we got in this article is the website from Coca-Cola. That's their DEI website. So yeah, it's hilarious. Next one is from Newsweek. I'm going to refresh it because this is what it looked like when I first clicked on it. There's an important reason why I did that because The title is, and it's from Newsweek, Coca-Cola faces TikTok backlash over alleged Latino worker firings, from published February 10th. And the video right under the title is a video of people getting arrested by ICE in Maryland. And it's titled "ICE ramps up arrests across the U.S." So it's giving you this illusion, kind of priming you to think that there is a connection between ICE and Coca-Cola and people getting arrested, because it's literally under the title. So what else? You tell me, what else am I supposed to think? What is my little lizard brain supposed to think? Okay, moving on. If I was rushing, right? Or if I was just like a passive consumer just clicking through, what am I supposed to think? Of course my brain, this is just manipulation. And that's another thing about propaganda, is that it's just psychology, and that's why it's kind of so cheap and easy to do. Moving on. Coca-Cola is at the center of a growing online boycott after claims surfaced that the company fired Latino workers in Texas and reported them to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. The allegations, which have spread rapidly on TikTok, have fueled a movement called the Latino Freeze, urging consumers to stop purchasing Coca-Cola products and support Latino-owned businesses instead. Newsweek has reached out to Coca-Cola for comment on this matter. You see how there's no comment yet? Don't worry, we'll get to it. The context. Latinos make up a significant portion of Coca-Cola's consumer base, particularly in the U.S. and Latin America, where the company has over 530 million consumers. If the boycott continues gaining traction, it could lead to a notable financial impact. The controversy also stresses the power of social media in shaping public perception and corporate accountability, even in cases where allegations remain unverified. You like that? That, first of all, that's not the context of the story, but they do give you like this? This is a little breadcrumb. I like this. The controversy also stresses the power of social media in shaping public perception and corporate accountability. It's an interesting experiment they're running. Who's they? Literally Newsweek. Like that's who's they. I'm naming it. Trying to stick to reality and the facts that we do have at hand. Did Coca-Cola call ICE on its employees? Finally getting to the gosh darn question. That's the freaking context. Okay. The controversy began on TikTok, where activists and influencers accused Coca-Cola of firing Latino employees and reporting them to ICE. The claims quickly gained traction under the hashtag Latino Freeze, with users calling for a boycott of Coca-Cola and other major U.S. brands they believe are complicit in anti-immigration policies. Dude, why would they do that? Out of everything. I'm not even going to go on a rant of how... I'm not going to go on a rant. On its website, the Freeze Latino movement, you see, why do you keep switching this around? The Freeze Latino movement calls on the community to take a stand, urging, quote, Latinos and Latinas stop spending money, hold the line. We can all collectively make a big impact by simply holding and not spending our money. The movement aims to withhold financial support from companies it believes are harming the Latino community. Coca-Cola is not the only corporation facing backlash. The Latino Freeze movement has also called for boycotts of major American brands, including Walmart, McDonald's, Starbucks, Subway, Pizza Hut, Home Depot, Tesla, KFC, and Domino's. The campaign encourages consumers to replace American-made products with those produced in Mexico or other Latin American countries. Okay, start off with the question of, did Coca-Cola call ICE on its employees? Okay, they have yet to answer that. Despite the growing backlash, Coca-Cola has yet to issue an official statement addressing the claims. A review of the company's records and public filings have found no evidence of mass layoffs that align with the allegations. Even though the ICE allegations remain unproven, which is exactly why Coca-Cola didn't issue an official statement. I don't know, that's dumb. Coca-Cola has sorry, I'm not going to editorialize. Even though the ICE allegations remain unproven, Coca-Cola has faced past accusations related to labor practices, environmental concerns, and racial discriminations. That makes a lot more sense. The company has been criticized for depleting water resources, mistreating workers, and engaging in questionable business practices. These past issues have made it easier for consumers to believe the latest accusations, regardless of the validity. Oh my God, they just did that. I love when they tell you what they do right in front of the face. I love it. I love it. They said, we know these guys have a shady past, and so we're going to take advantage of it by framing them with this like weird thing that they definitely didn't do. Continuing on. The Latino market is a high demographic for Coca-Cola, and a sustained boycott could impact its reputation and revenue. While social media-driven boycotts often fade over time, this one continues to gain momentum, with more users pledging to stop buying Coca-Cola products. Coca-Cola told Newsweek in an email, "We can confirm that the accusations in the video against the Coca-Cola company are false." What happens next? Coca-Cola's handling of the situation will be critical in determining how long the backlash lasts. Okay. Wow. We're halfway done in this article. Okay, they confirmed that they said that this never happened. So it's up to you as journalists to find out if they're hiding something. And you said that there was a review of public company records for public filings, and you found no evidence of mass layoffs. So what are you fishing for? And also, I'm just going to say this. Okay, if you're looking at the page, we're looking at, this story was updated February 10th at 3:42 p.m. Eastern Time. So, and what they added, what was updated was the comment from Coca-Cola that says that these accusations are not true. This story itself was posted February 10th at 2:59 Eastern Time, p.m. Eastern Time. So it was like an hour, less than an hour apart. They could have waited. They didn't have to post it. Like, this is just sloppy journalism. Really bad. Fourth story. What's the last story? And this is actually the best one, from the Independent. Shout out Independent for this one. Why people are boycotting Coca-Cola, and did they really call ICE on their own employees? Boom, finally, thank you, Independent. A viral TikTok video claims without evidence that thousands of Latino or American workers were fired in Texas and reported to immigration officials. Finally, some journalism. Coca-Cola is facing social media backlash in the wake of rumors that soft drink giant laid off Latino staff and reported them to Immigration Customs Enforcement agents, with a grassroots movement already calling for a boycott against a beverage company. The Latino Freeze movement arose in response to Donald Trump's executive orders to roll out federal diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and crackdown on immigration. The retaliatory campaign urges Latinos to stop making purchases from large American corporations that are believed to have ties with Trump administrations, or have recently rolled back their DI programs in the wake of Trump's return to office. While Coca-Cola hasn't announced any revisions to its DI program, its CEO James Quincy gifted Diet Coke-loving Trump a commemorative bottle of the beverage, leading to his inauguration last month, a tradition starting with George W. Bush in 2005. Latinos and Latinas, stop spending money, the movement website read. Hold the line. We can all collectively make a big impact by simply holding and not spending our money. God damn, I feel like I read that 100 times. The Coca-Cola boycott began gaining traction after rumors emerged that not only had it fired Latino employees from Texas bottling plant, but it was reporting them to immigration officers. However, no such evidence has been verified. Quote, "We can confirm that the accusations against the Coca-Cola company are false," a spokesman told The Independent. In a TikTok video that garnered almost 2 million views. See, that's what I'm talking about. 2 million views. Employment lawyer Trang Tran claimed Coca-Cola laid off, quote, thousands of Latin American workers at the Cerebus bottling plant in Texas, and then called ICE. Other videos on social media app, including one in Spanish that received nearly 3 million views, baselessly claimed that the company attempted to apologize for making calls to the federal agency. There have been no reports that Coca-Cola has terminated large numbers of staff, which would have needed to be disclosed as a public traded company. The rumored Texas location, the Cerebus bottling plant, doesn't exist. Let that shit sink in. Several social media posts appear to have mistakenly combined calls for a Coca-Cola boycott with ice rumors. Yeah, now I want a Coca-Cola with some ice in it. The Latino Freeze movement has also called for people to switch from U.S. products to Latin American-based goods instead to oppose Trump's proposed tariffs on Canada and Mexico and Canada. Latinos make nearly 20% of the U.S. population, according to the 2023 census data. Coca-Cola website states it serves approximately 530 million consumers in Latin America, equating to a retail value of $120 billion. All right, thank you, Newsweek. All right, this is very important stuff. We got a name. Trang Tran, a self-proclaimed immigration lawyer. He's apparently, I'm going to say, is he the first one that said it? Okay, it has 2 million views. He claimed that ICE was called. And let's go look at that video.
For laying off thousands of Latin American workers at Cerberus bottling plant in Texas. But that's not the end of it. What made it worse was that they turned over their own employees to ICE after terminating them. Not only is this action by Coca-Cola justify a boycott, but let's talk about the legal aspect of it too. The action by Coca-Cola violates a federal law that a lot of people are overlooking, and it is called the Immigration and National Origin Act. It prohibits termination based on national origin. So this federal law prohibits an employer from terminating, even recruiting, hiring, or terminating an employee based on someone's place of birth, their country of origin, or because they sound foreign. So if you have a bunch of people that you suspect are illegal or undocumented, or you were involved in trafficking them to your facility, your bottling plant, then you really can't terminate them and then turn them over to ICE, because then you violate this federal statute. And the statute is written really clearly. It says you cannot discriminate against someone based on their national origin or citizenship status. So if an employer is now retaliating against its undocumented workforce and threatening or actively turning them over to ICE and terminating them, then that employer runs the risk of violating this federal statute. Okay, back to work.
Well, I definitely think that he regrets posting that. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, just because I think that he sounded like he was just trying to give advice. I think maybe he was part of that like commentary class that got kind of swept up in the allegations of what Coca-Cola was doing. Although I think it's just a little odd that he had the exact bottling plant name, and that bottling plant, as we read in the last story by The Independent, was not, doesn't exist. It is fictitious. So maybe he's just part of the, commentary. Maybe he is patient zero in this, in the sense that he was the first one to post about this fake news. But either way, going back to the story, I want to just remind listeners, I was right. I called this shit out. I said, what, this is super fishy. But this is just a great exercise. And moving forward, the Latino Freeze movement is something that all of those articles had in common. So I have this piece of audio that I'm going to play that's going to tell us a little bit more about what it is, even though we read all those articles. But just stick with me, and then we're going to tour their website a little bit.
The idea of a Latino freeze is growing. The idea is for Latinos to stop shopping at big stores and restaurants like Target, Walmart, and McDonald's, places that recently rolled back their DEI programs. The move followed similar action by the White House and federal government.
If you don't respect our community, then, you shouldn't have our dollars.
Civil rights leader Dolores Huerta is helping lead the charge for a national boycott. Comedian John Leguizamo is also on board and is pushing for a national freeze on all shopping February 28th, calling it an economic blackout.
The call to action for the Latino Freeze is targeting specific brands.
Dr. Caroline Chen is professor at San Jose State School of Business. Dr. Chen says that Latinos make up $3.5 trillion in buying power, meaning this isn't an idle threat. But she also notes a successful boycott would need to be a prolonged one, lasting longer than a month.
If it was 2 months, 3 months, 6, etc., maybe then you'd make significant inroads to hurting those particular companies economically.
Okay, and we are back, and we're on the website latinofreeze.com, Latino Freeze movement website, totally not astroturfed. You have the BLM style black square. It says no spending, hold your money. They freeze NIH, DEI, immigrations. We stop our spending. I don't know what that means, but I have a feeling they're going to tell me. Freeze the National Institute of Health, ? Freeze diversity, equity, and inclusion, ? Freeze immigration in the United States. I think they mean into the United States. Did you know that the Latino GDP in the United States is the 5th largest in the world? I don't think Latino GDP is a thing, and I'm going to dive into that in just a second, so hold your horses. $3.7 trillion. Latinos also make up 20% of the U.S. population. I can see that. Latinos and Latinas, and anyone, stop spending money. Hold the line. We can all collectively make a big impact by simply holding and not spending our money. I read that a million times by now. Starting now until they show us that they care about our minority and immigrant populations of the United States. Action items. Ooh, I love action items. Okay. First action item, Latino Freeze. Hold and sit and save your spending money. Okay, shop for only essentials, i.e. food, and be thoughtful, selective where you buy. Okay, I like this. This is just good. This is just good financial advice. Okay, continue to work and seek services, i.e. medical care. No big purchases. Cancel subscriptions. Avoid making major purchases. No taxes on your savings. What? What is no taxes? They're just adding words together. What in the AI? No taxes on your savings. I don't know what, like an IRA. What are they trying to say right now? Or I guess, is that like a 401? I don't know what. I'm giving this too much credit. I'm going to continue. Support Latino American, Black American, and allied American businesses that are supportive to this movement. So spend your money, but only with people who... Just very confused. Support local supportive American businesses to this movement who value DEI in immigrants. Okay, I get it. Make sure you pay for your rent, mortgage/bills, responsibilities. Oh, just pay for your responsibility. That's vague. Healthcare, taxes, etc. Healthy food. Okay, spread the word in person and all social media platforms. Make a video on all social media platforms in English and Spanish. Tag at Latino Freeze on Instagram and use the hashtag Latino Freeze movement. Hashtag Latino Freeze. Wow. And it continues. I am they took my breath away. You got stores where you should shop, places where you shouldn't shop. according to them. Okay, well, I'm glad Ulta is on the good guys list. That's good. Okay, TJ Maxx, don't let me see your Ross on the bad guys. I know Ross is like Ellis Island. I know they're not there anyways, but you see, even there's no clarity. And this is exactly like the pipeline that brings you here. Like all those articles, it brought me here to this website because they kept mentioning it, right? So I'm on this website, I'm looking around, and then the propaganda itself, action items, it's literally in the words action items, uh hold the line, healthy food. I don't know exactly what the protest there is. I'm still blown away by this healthy food. They're telling, I mean, this is just really solid financial advice, especially now that the stock market is down, and it's not because of this um you know boycott. It is because of the tariffs and years of shit going down the drain for a while. But it's what goes down must come up, right? I'm just being hopeful, but this is odd and not a legitimate anything. There's actually no there. Although after the healthy foods, they did catch my eye with this so-called "did you know?" I love this "did you know" tactic. Did you know that the Latino GDP in the United States is the fifth largest in the world? You know what? I did not know that because I don't think that's a thing. I don't think that's a thing. Let's see if they have anything else on it, because they just kind of leave it hanging there as though that's just a fact. Oh, hold on. Wait. There is, okay, let's see. Oh, there it is. Looking for somewhere to contribute. Interesting. Of course, the ACLU is all over this. And the League of United Latino American Citizens, they were also the group that helped Jocelyn Rojo Carranza's mother, try to get justice from the school. So just interesting that they pop up here also. Not saying or like implying anything. I'm just saying it's always the usual suspects, when it comes to certain things. Now, I'm not saying that they're suspicious in any way. It's just a turn of phrase. Anyways, I'm looking at this really interesting graph. It's the gross domestic product for 2022, and it has the United States first, China afterwards, Japan third, fourth, Germany, and the fifth country is U.S. Latinos. Right under it, India and the UK. Now, you might say to yourself, oh, well, I've never heard of this place called U.S. Latinos. Well, neither have I. Because this is probably one of the most absurd statements that I've ever heard in my life. It's first, I'm just gonna say we're lucky that they even produced this for. Oh, this is hyperlinked. Okay, yes, this of course, there's a study that's somehow related to this. Is there a study? I'm going to assume there's a study. I will go take a look at it in a second. They're trying to say that if you took out Latino Americans or Latinos that you live in America, hence why their country would be called U.S. Latinos, they would make the fifth largest GDP. That is such an absurd statement that is not tethered in any type of reality. There's no way that on the best, you would have to be, I don't know, that's something that you would think of when you're like stoned. I don't know. That's the only thing that I could make it make sense. It is such a ridiculous effort that they're trying to make this their point of reinforcement. So at the same time, they're saying we need DI, and because you don't have DI means that you don't support us, but also they make up the fifth largest GDP. So, are you oppressed? Are you not oppressed? I'm just confused. Anyways, let's take a look at the actual survey that is hyperlinked to this ridiculous graph. It's called there it is, the 2024 U.S. Latino GDP report. This is so silly, but let's just take a look at this together. The effort to calculate the Latino GDP began with David Hayes Bautista around 2004. His idea was to use established government data programs to calculate a robust summary statistic for the economic performance of U.S. Latinos. The first report was in 2017. Since 2019, they've published a yearly report. I'm going to move on to page 5 so I can actually understand more specifically about what this U.S. Latino GDP is. All right, starting on the top of page 5, the U.S. Latino GDP report provides a factual view of the large and rapidly growing economic contributions of Latinos living in the United States. I just don't understand this term U.S. Latino GDP. It's so ridiculous and fundamentally makes no sense. And GDP is measured like for a country, not for an ethnic group. This means that there would be a black GDP, a white GDP, an Asian GDP. Like, this is ridiculous. What about like a mixed race GDP? This makes no sense. The statement implies that Latinos are an independent economic entity, which isn't how any of that works. It's just such a ridiculous statement. It's like saying that your arm is a person because it can lift things, or that your dog is a car because it can move from one place to another. If they wanted to give an honest intro, it could be something like Latinos contribute significantly to the U.S. economy as part of its GDP, but that's not what they're trying to do. They're not trying to be honest. We continue on, and the report actually gives us a definition of a GDP. Gross domestic product, GDP, is a broad measure of economic activities representing the value of all finished goods and services produced within a geographic area in a given year. GDP growth is often treated as the universal summary statistic for the performance of a economy. See, they're giving us a definition, and even within the definition, their whole concept of a Latino GDP makes no sense. It is not the universal measure for economic performance. It just tells you how much the economy produces. They literally gave us the definition there. The economy can be, GDP can grow while people's income isn't keeping up, causing an inflation, but the GDP can still grow. So this isn't really an honest statement. None of this is honest. To use this as a national measuring stick for an ethnic group is even sillier. It is illogical, and it tells us absolutely nothing. Anyway, I'm not even an economist, and I can even tell you this is so ridiculous. So GDP alone doesn't tell us the whole story, and the only reason that I'm even mentioning this is because they brought this up. They told me Latino GDP, U.S. Latino GDP is a thing, and that's just so ridiculous. And this GDP thing keeps coming up in all the Latino Freeze movement messaging, and the whole movement is pretty much based itself on this whole Latino GDP report, which they have this graph and then link to it, and it's just not a thing. So their whole movement is based on a fallacy, on a lie, on an illogical, I feel like I'm Spock or something. This is all just not real. And again, what about where's the Black GDP report, Asian report? What about the Pacific Islander report, who are half Irish and a quarter Roma? The Latino Freeze movement is using this GDP concept, and it's not an economic reality at all, but they're using this as a framing device to create a sense of Latino economic power, but they're also promoting Latino victimhood, making Latinos feel like both a dominant force and a marginalized group that needs like special policies like DEI. But let's take a look at their mission statement, and maybe it will shed some light for us. I know it seems like I'm kind of taking this not seriously, but I can't really stress enough how terrible and how serious this is. They are using the reality of a lot of people who are Latino in the United States and the fears around immigration, which are totally substantial and real and make sense, and they are using it for emotional blackmail. They are creating Agitprop to create these negative feelings that will then turn into beliefs, that will then turn into action. And it's really, really gross. And we are already now, present day, seeing some impacts that I didn't really see coming, where now there's like a Black person versus Latino person kind of bad blood happening, at least on the internet, which again is an echo chamber and not reality. So there's something to be said about that. I'm going to wrap this episode pretty soon, just a couple more minutes. Bear with me. Thank you so much for still being here. Let's read this mission statement. The Latino Freeze movement is a nonpartisan grassroots effort, dedicated to demanding respect for Latinos, indigenous, and immigrant communities of the United States. By advocating that everyday purchases be made with American businesses that support the Latino community, United States Latinos make up 20% of the population and contribute to a $3.7 trillion gross domestic product, GDP, the 5th largest in the world. God damn it. It's not a thing. I'm sorry to tell you, it is not a thing. That is a made up thing. This movement was sparked in response to the rollback of diversity, equity, and inclusion in healthcare and in other professional fields, as well as the growing fear and marginalization of our immigrant communities. The Latino Freeze movement strategically holds our collective economic presence and supports businesses that uplift nuestra familia, our family. So it's not really a boycott as much as it's a redirect, which, it's your money. You should definitely do what you want with your money. Hell yeah. But to say that this is somehow related to the stuff that it's just so ridiculous. At best, I can assume that the grain of salt in all this mess is that Latinos contribute to the U.S. economy. Yes. And maybe there's something to be said about as a whole, they are doing better than past years. And I think that it's safe to say that that's a fact. And in my opinion, that's great. But the framing here is arguing or suggesting that Latinos are finding economic success because they're Latinos and not because they're part of the American economic system. The Latino GDP isn't a thing because there's no consideration for expenditures and taxes and social welfare. And this is because U.S. Latinos aren't a self-governing country that has its own economic system. The concept of Latino GDP is only possible because Latinos are part of the U.S. economy, not because of any inherent economic prowess tied up to their ethnicity. It's not their Latino-ness that's creating wealth. It's the access to U.S. resources, jobs, and markets. So if you remove Latinos from the U.S., and you put them in a different country, their economic GDP will not be the 5th largest in the world because their success, again, is tied up to the larger economic system, American system in America where they live. U.S. Latinos is not a country. It is Wakanda for Latinos. But okay, I'll bite. Let's say we live in a world where vibranium is king and the national of a country called U.S. Latinos have the 5th largest GDP in the world. Then why would they need a DI program? Why would they need that little bit of extra help? How could you be marginalized and the 5th largest GDP in the world economy? How are you a winner and a victim at the same time? If the overarching complaints and grievances that we've been hearing are that we're on stolen land and it's capitalist, racist society, then why would an economy that's as big or even bigger than UK, Russia, Canada need DI initiatives? This is very similar to that far-right propaganda where they tell white dudes that they both build civilization and that they are the West, but they're also being replaced by immigrants. It's usually some gnarly anti-Semitic undertones, but you get what I mean. How can you be a winner and a loser at the same time? It doesn't make any sense. So to wrap it up, the Coca-Cola ICE raid story was fake. The aim was to create a larger conversation about, obviously, the Trump migration plans, which this is all my opinion. This is me asking the why and taking a little bit of creative liberties, but I think this kind of makes sense. It bodes. I think also to sow some confusion about deportations, kind of scare the Latino community in general, feed into this very, very real fear that a lot of undocumented immigrants are kind of facing and feeling right now. And I think the fact that the ICE raid story was definitely a hoax. I don't know if we would classify it as black propaganda, whatever, but I think it's also interesting to see some of the commentary, some of the comments under the commentary videos, because some of them got pretty gnarly, pretty gross and racist. And I want you to know that there are times where when you see comments like that, they aren't real people, they're robots, or they're agitators. So, I don't want people to think that the world is really all that terrible. But why that's done is to solidify that, yeah, we live in a terrible, terrible place and everyone hates you and blah, 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 blah. Go be a radical. That's what they want. Who's they? I don't know. I'm just kidding. The Latino Freeze movement and their website is the messaging tool, much like how BLM was in 2020. The website is a hub for the actual propaganda. That's what that research linked to. And that's why that graph gave that theory, with the scientific backing kind of to the movement. So the Agitprop is meant to make you feel something, and then the propaganda makes you believe something. And in my opinion, the Latino Freeze movement is just, manufactured anti-Trump or like Trump opposition plot, astroturfing itself as some sort of organic grassroots movement, hoping to get Latinos back on their side. And it makes sense. We saw in 2020 that 43% of overall Latino vote went to Trump. That's an 8% increase from 2020. And Democrats have no plans, no vision, and that's why they have to rely on fear-mongering. They wish that they can get another BLM George Floyd moment, and for the sake of our sanity, let's hope they don't get one. And the crazy thing is, Trump told voters back when he was campaigning that mass deportations were going to happen. So now when I see Latino Trump voters crying about deportations, or Arabs for Trump confused about his plans for relocating Palestinians, I just wonder, why did you vote for him if you didn't want this to happen? While the majority of Black and Hispanic people are still voting blue, the numbers are showing a very clear rise of minority voters going to the right. Hispanic people aren't going to be the minority in America for much longer. This is an immediate issue for Democrats, and if this trend continues, they could see some major changes in the next 5 years. Here's this interesting redistricting map. Anyways, my name is Art Delinsky. You've been listening to me talk about the boycott that cried wolf, the Latino Freeze movement, here on the Art Deli Sideshow. Don't be a fool. Stay in school.